Perfect square trinomials are in the format of ax squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So the first and last terms are perfect squares. The middle term is 2 times the square root of the first and the square root of the last. Okay. So what is the square root of 5? Darn it. What's the square root of 25? 5. So this one is 2 times 5 times, what's the square root of x squared? X. So 2 times 5 is 10, and then we have the x. So that is the 2ab. Okay. What we're doing today is we are going to be able to x factor something like this without actually using the x factor. So at the top, we'd have a times c, so 1 times 25 is 25. At the bottom are b, which is 10. What two numbers multiply to 25, add to 10? 5 and 5. So I can use my shortcut because my first term is 1. So this would be x plus 5 and x plus 5. I can rewrite that. How can I rewrite it? X plus 5 squared. This is what we're going to today. So what we need to be able to do today is we need to be able to find out what this term would be, the 25, without it being there. And it's really not too bad. So these next 3 examples, we're not doing the completing the square perfectly. We're just doing a portion of it to start out with. So breaking it up into little bite-sized pieces. So first, we want to find this piece. So it says find the value of c to make each trinomial a perfect square, like the one above. So what we want to do is we'll be finding half of the b term, and then we'll be squaring that number. So for number 1a, what's our b term? 8. So we're going to take 8 divided by 2, which is 4, and then we're going to square that, which is 16. So if I put plus 16 on the end here, we've made a perfect square trinomial. That's just like the very first step of what we're going to be doing. So we're just practicing finding what would make this a perfect square trinomial to start off with. So for 1b, what's our b? Negative 12. Good. So we're going to take that term, divide it by 2, and what do we get? Negative 6. And then when I square that, careful, every time I square something, it will be positive.
So it's 36.
Good. So that would be positive 36. If I do my last one,
You can't.
b is 13. So if I take 13 divided by 2, let's see what it would look like if I kept it as a fraction. So if that's a decimal.
Oh.
If I keep it as a fraction and I square it, remember those squared rules? I would square the top and the bottom. What's 13 squared?
Oh, no, okay.
169. 2 squared would be 4. So here we could either put 169 over 4, or we could do 13 divided by 2. You guys already said it's 6.5, and then squaring that, we could have put 42.25 here. Sometimes it doesn't come out clean. Most of the time, it does come out to a whole number. Most of the time. Okay, so let's jump into our first example. Just like I did when we did factoring the first time, I left you blanks. So the steps are all here. It says get the x squared and the bx on a side by itself. So just like these ones, we started out with just the x squared and the bx. So I wanted to get this 12 to the other side. So how do I get the 12 to the other side? Subtract 12. So these would cancel. What's 19 minus 12? 7. Okay, so now we're on the same track. We have the x squared and the bx. That's all we started out with in the last 3 examples. Completing the square, I'm going to drop down this 7. It's already on that side. I'm going to be looking for this term, which is what we just did in the last 3.
Divide by
So I'm going to take my b term. I'm going to show the work off to the side. What's my b?
6.
Negative 6. Okay, so if I divide that by 2, I get negative 3. Then when I square that,
you get 9.
I get 9. So the 9 would go there. To balance our equation, what we add to one side, we have to add to the other. So I'm going to add 9 on this side as well. We have to balance the equation. So that's what we just did. So we got the x squared and the bx by itself. We took the b term and we divided it by 2. We squared that b term, and then we added that value to both sides of the equation. Those are the same steps every time. All right, so now on the right side, what's 7 plus 9?
16.
16. Okay, on the left side now, I'll show you another shortcut on how to find that. But the left side, so if I kind of cover some of this up, there's a lot going on here. If I kind of cover this up, I have this trinomial, x squared minus 6x plus 9. So if I do my x thing, 1 times 9 is 9. At the bottom, negative 6. What two numbers multiply to 9 and then add to negative 6? Negative 3, negative 3. So that would become x minus 3 and x minus 3, right?
Yeah.
Or I could write
X minus 3 squared.
x minus 3 squared. And that's the format that I have laid out here for you. X minus 3 squared. Shortcut to do that, instead of doing this x every time, whenever I'm looking at this part of the question and I say, okay, b is negative 6, divide that by 2. What do we get? Negative 3 right there. You can just drop it in right there. Okay, why does that work? It's because this middle term is half of square root of these two. Okay, so it consistently works. So then our last step is to square root both sides. So I have something squared over here, and this time it happens to be a perfect square. So if I square root x minus 3 squared, what happens when I square root something squared? They cancel.
Yeah.
Square rooting something squared goes away. So I have x minus 3 equals something and x minus 3 equals something. When I square root 16, what's the square root of 16? 4. So you're telling me that 4 times 4 is 16,
Yep.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, negative 4 times negative 4 is also 16. So this could be positive or negative 4. So I'm going to set this x minus 3 equals 4 and x minus 3 equals negative 4. I know this seems a little hairy. We've got a few more times to go through it. Add 3 to both sides for this one. So x equals 4 plus 3 is 7. That's one of our solutions. Add 3 to both sides on this one.
And then you got x equals negative 1.
Good, x equals negative 1. Again, I will absolutely accept those as your answer, or you could rewrite it, squiggly bracket, negative 1, 7. All right, let's do another one. So I'm going to avoid doing the x thing. I'm going to show you how these kind of drop down. my first step is I want to get this 4 to the other side so I can do the completing the square method. How do I get 4 to the other side? Subtract 4. Okay, so I have x squared plus 10x, these cancel, equals 12 minus 4 is
8.
8. Great. All right, so that was my goal. I wanted to get the square term and the x term alone. So now what I'm thinking here is I'm going to start to rewrite it. X squared plus 10x and then something. It's always going to be plus something because that number will be a squared equals 8 plus that same something. Underneath this will be x something squared. So I'm going to take my b term. B is what? 10. I'm going to divide that by 2. What's
5?
5? So this becomes x plus 5.
That means 5 goes on the blank.
5 does not go on the blank. I have to square it. Good.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to square that number now, and I get 25. 25 is what goes on that blank on both sides. Let's double check. If I square root 25, what's that? 5. If I squared x squared, what's that? X. So 5 times x times 2, is that 10x? Yeah. So that follows the format at the very top. So now let's simplify on the right. What's 8 plus 25?
33.
33. Okay. So now I'm just going to write this note so we can follow back on our notes to see what's happening. We're wanting to solve by square rooting. So we want to be able to get x alone. So write yourself this note. Square root both sides. And this will create 2 equations for us. So our first equation, second equation. When I square root the left side, when I square root this, all I get is x plus 5. X plus 5 will be the other start of the other equation. When I square root 33, it'll be the positive version of that number and the negative version of that number. So let's plug that into our calculator. I'm realizing it's not a perfect square because 36 is. So we're going to get a decimal. Let's round to the nearest tenth. So second, x squared, 33. Square root of 33 is 5.74. So let's stick with 5.7. It's okay that we're getting a decimal. So 5.7 will go here, and negative 5.7 will go here. On this one, why is that negative? Because when I square root a number, like, all right, so when I square root 25, I'm really thinking, what 2 numbers multiply to 25? So what's true for that? 5 times 5 is 25. And negative 5 times negative 5 is still 25. So square root of a number is positive that number and negative that number. That's why it's creating 2 equations. So this time it just happened to be decimals. So when I square rooted 33, I get 5.7. I had to round. Or it could have been negative 5.7. So we have to create 2 equations because our parabola crosses 2 points. That's still what we're finding. Really good question though. Okay, so, and we solve the same way for each. So subtract 5 on this one. So these cancel. So x equals, what's 5.7 minus 5?
Just 0.7.
Just 0.7. So So that's one of our answers.
Minus.
This one, if I subtract 5, good, negative 10.7. That's my two solutions. So everything that we've done up to now have been whole numbers, right? We haven't dealt with any decimals. These type of problems would have been near impossible to do through X factoring because we don't have two whole numbers that would work because they're decimals. Okay, so this is a secondary method that we could use. Let's flip it over. Let's do two more. We'll take our time. All right, so the first thing we need to do is get this 5 to the other side. How do I do that? Subtract 5 on both sides. Cancel, so x squared minus 12x equals 13 minus 5 is 8. Good. All right, so I know that I'm going to be finding my c term. So it's x squared minus 12x plus something equals 8 plus that same something. So I'm going to take my b term. My b is negative 12. I'm going to divide that by 2, and what do I get? Negative 6. When I square that number, what do I get? Positive 36. If you just type in negative 6 squared into your calculator and don't use parentheses, it will tell you negative. You have to use parentheses. Or leave that negative off. I added it to this side, so I have to add it to the right. Let's simplify the right side. What's 8 plus 36? 44. Okay, on the left side, it will end up being x, maybe plus something or minus something squared. I find this number by dividing b. So what's negative 12 divided by 2? Negative 6. So in the last one, I kind of like threw it all down at once. You don't have to throw it all down at once. That's kind of a lot. You can break it down. Okay, now we have it in the format. X plus or minus some number squared equals another number. My next step is to square root both sides, which will get me two equations. X minus 6 equals some number, and x minus 6 equals some negative number. Same number, though. So in your calculator, what do we want to square root?
Negative. No.
We square rooted this side and got x minus 6. X minus 6.
44.
Okay, 44. So what is the square root of 44? 6.63. So 6.6 and negative 6.6. The whole reason we had to set up two equations because square root of 44 could be positive or negative 6.6. In our first solution, add 6 to both sides, cancel, x equals 6.6 plus 6 is 12.6, one of our solutions. This one, add 6 to both sides, x equals negative, right? Negative 0.6. Good. I guess catching the hang of it a little bit. Okay. If not, you got to ask questions so we can help clear some stuff up. No. Well. All right. So first step, we want to move the 4 because we want to get the x squared and the x alone. How do I get the 4 to the other side? Subtract 4. These cancel. So x squared plus 7x equals 10 minus 4, 6. I'm noticing right away that we're going to get decimals. How am I noticing that? Because 7 is not divisible by 2, so we're going to get decimals, and that is okay. All right, so I know that I'll have x squared plus 7x plus some number equals 6 plus that same match. How do I find this number? I'm going to take my b, which is 7. Divide that by 2, and what do I get? 3.5. I want to square that number now. So 3.5 squared is 12.25. I'm not going to round it because it's not going on forever. So I'm just going to leave it as 12.25. 12.25. So on the right side, 6 plus 12.25 is 18.25. On the left, I'll have x, something squared. I know it's going to be positive because my middle term is positive, so x plus something. I find that number by taking 7 divided by 2, 3.5. When I square root both sides to solve completely, the square root goes away, so I just get x plus 3.5 equals, I have the square root of 18.25. And I get 4.27. If I'm rounding to the 10th place right here, the 7 behind it says round up. 5 or higher, round up. 4 or lower, stay the same. Okay, so the number behind it. So this becomes 4.3. So I'm saying 4.3 times 4.3 is 18.25. I rounded those numbers, so it's very close to it. Okay. Also, negative 4.3 times negative 4.3 is still 18.25. So that's why I'm setting up two equations. Negative 4.3. If you want to label it like 1 and 2 like we've been doing, that's fine. First equation, to get x alone, subtract 3.5. These cancel. X equals 4.3 minus 3.5. 0.8. Decimals get a little hairy. Plug it into your calculator if you are not sure. Okay, this one. Subtract 3.5 again on both sides. X equals negative 7.8. Very good. Both of those are my solutions. One last one. Okay, this is an evaluate type question. There's a good chance you see this on your evaluate this month. So it says, Niall wants to complete the square of the equation x squared plus 4x equals 3. Drag and drop the missing number below to help Niall finish completing the square. So let's look. He's got the x squared and the x and no number. So how would he get this number in the parentheses? If he has the x squared plus 4x, he would have plus something equals 3. How would he get that number? He would take the b term, which is 4, divide it by 2, and get that number. So what's 4 divided by 2? 2. So we would want this one. So then he would get 2, and then he would square it to get this number. But they're asking for what would be in the parentheses. Okay. This next one is also a evaluate question. It says choose from the following to complete the square. Notice over here, we have fractions galore. So how we kept it, this one, we kept it as a fraction, and this one we used decimals. I bet they want us to use fractions, right? The decimal one is sometimes easier, but looking at this, looks like they want us to use fractions. So we won't make any decimals. All right. So the first step would be to move the 8 to the other side. So subtracting 8. Looks like it's gone on this side, and we have negative 8 over here. So looks like they're doing it right so far. To get this number, we would take the b term, which is 5. We would divide it by 2,
So 2.5.
but they want us to leave it as a fraction.
So it would be,
And then we would square it. So, is there 5 over 2 squared over here as an option?
yeah,
Yeah, 5 over 2 squared. That would end up going into both of these blanks.
so I'm guessing the answer would be the top one.
Okay. Another hint is they have right here negative 8 plus 5 over 2 squared. That's all we have to do is figure out what would go in those blanks. That one right there. We don't even have to finish solving it. Questions?